Testing, just making sure you guys can hear me. You guys can keep talking and mingling. We're gonna get started in about 8 minutes. Just setting up.
I'm going to start with the land acknowledgement. My husband and I moved here 26 years ago for economic opportunities and to be close to the mountains to the west of the city of Calgary, Mokinstis. When I'm unable to get out to the mountains to hike or cross-country ski, I walk regularly in my neighborhood, which often leads me to Edworthy Park. It is in these natural spaces where I think most about time immemorial and the ancestors who walked these paths, gathered food, and hunted. I would like to acknowledge that this forum is located where the Bow River meets the Elbow River. This site is on Treaty 7 land and has long been called Mokinstis by the Blackfoot, also Wichispa by the Stoney Nakoda, Gutitsi by the Tsuut'ina, and is the birthplace of the city of Calgary. We also recognize the Otem-Siwak Métis government, Métis Nation Battle River Territory, Nose Hill Métis District 5, and Elbow Métis District 6. My name is Melissa Senefani. Welcome to this special political forum, food poll for Ward 6. Special thanks. Special thanks to all the candidates for putting their names forward and for bringing the yummy waffles today for our blind taste test. A big thank you to the boards of all community associations involved today: Strathcona, Christie Park, and Aspen, West Springs, Cougar Ridge, and my association, Coach Hill and Patterson Heights. Community associations are the heartbeat of our neighborhoods. So I encourage you, if you are able and not already a part of yours, to give some time to make things happen in your community. I'm grateful that this ad hoc committee of community associations has been as excited as me to host this forum. This will determine if your taste buds match your political tastes. So get to know your candidates and take some time to vote for your favorite waffle at the break. It is a blind taste test, so no cheating. You don't need to register for this vote, and you will need to taste all flavors to be eligible to vote. So now we will hand it over to the president of the Coach Hill Patterson Heights Community Association and our forum moderator, Celine.
Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to our debate. My name is Talina, and I'm the president of the Coach Hill Patterson Heights Community Association. I am also your referee, but instead of a whistle, we have Carla over here, president of the West Springs Cougar Ridge Community Association, and she has a timer. So if you guys go over time, I'm going to give you the worst death stare. Worst. Anyways, I really wanted to thank the Strathcona Christie Aspen Community Association and West Springs Cougar Ridge Community Association and all of your volunteers to helping us create this joint event, putting this on. And if anybody's feeling very passionate about development after this debate, West Springs Cougar Ridge Community Association is looking for an expansion and development director. So before we jump into the debate, I just want to address the elephant in the room. Our candidates brought waffles for that blind taste test that Melissa had talked about. And now I'm not saying the outcome of the debate hinges on who brought the best waffles, but if a candidate brought Eggos and another one brought, full-on homemade Belgian, well, your minds may be made up before the election. So I just wanted to go and introduce our candidates here. We have Joanne, and she's a local entrepreneur, the previous vice president of the Wildwood Community Association. She's a longtime board director for the UCP and the Federal Conservatives. She's also been a communications assistant for MP Ron Liepert. And she's also the coordinator for the Aristotle Foundation. And next to her is John Pantazopoulos. He's the CEO of Lucky Strike Energy, and he's the former VP of the Corporate Financial Services for ATB Financial. And he's also chaired the board of the Calgary Parking Authority for 5 years, from 2015 to 2020. And then we have Inam Teja. I apologize. All of these candidates are independent except for Inam Teja. He is with the Calgary party. Just wanted to make that clear for transparency. He's a housing policy specialist with the Calgary Drop-In Center, and he's the former vice president of the Coach Hill Patterson Heights Community Association and a former board member of More Neighbors Calgary. And then we finally have Jeff Watson. He's a former philanthropy advisor for World Vision Canada. He's served in politics for a long time as a federal Conservative MP in Ontario from 2004 to 2015. He's also been a provincial organizer for Jason Kenney's Unite Alberta and leadership campaigns. So these candidates are here to win your hearts, your minds, and your breakfast orders. So I'm just going to go over the rules of the debate. So each candidate is going to have 3 minutes to make an opening statement. We drew straws. So we're going to go in order, and we're going to flip the order as we go along so each candidate has a chance. We will move into questions with a 3-minute time limit to answer, and Carla is going to give them a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Questions are going to be followed by a 2-minute rebuttal by each candidate. They can say pass if they would like, and they're not going to go over time. I will cut them off. I'm like Netflix saying, are you still watching? But I'm less forgiving. And of course, from you guys, no interruptions. We're going to have no personal attacks, no heckling, no hate speech. We do have security at the back, so we want everybody to be on your best behavior. And no bribing the moderator with waffles, although for the record, I'm not saying I wouldn't consider it. So many of you residents have submitted questions. We do have new cards that have been or will be handed out. They are on clipboards, kind of over by that left wall, by those 2 young, handsome gentlemen over there. So if you do have questions, please write them down on those cue cards. Just for time constraints, we probably won't be able to get through everybody's questions, but we can forward these questions off to our candidates afterwards. And maybe we can create a e-news, or that would be okay. A lot of your questions were very similar, so we did amalgamate them. So if you hear your question, but wording is a little bit differently, just know that we did receive it. We just, in the interest of time, combined everything. So let's get started. We drew straws. So Jeff Watson gets to go first. You have 3 minutes for your opening statement. Remember, short, sweet, like waffles and maple syrup. See how I tied that back?
Hi, Jeff Watson. On October 20th, I asked for your vote for City Council Ward 6. I was a 4-time Conservative Member of Parliament with significant experience in government and a record of delivering results for communities. Voters have been clear. They want change, and I offer change you can trust. Mayor Vondeck and her majority have Calgary on the wrong track. Taxes up, spending out of control, blanket rezoning destroying the character of our unique communities, and a council focused on the wrong priorities. A plastic bag ban, the inappropriate climate emergency declaration. But is it any wonder? 9 of 14 councillors were rookies with no governing experience, and it showed in poor judgment, a long learning curve, and a complete misunderstanding of the role of council. The next council will have 8 new faces, and sadly, even less experience. City council isn't entry-level government. The responsibilities are sobering, and the challenges facing our city require job readiness on day 1, not year 3 or 4. You, the voters of Ward 6, have the only opportunity to ensure one of the 8 new council faces has actual experience governing. And I'm running on an action plan, 6 clear priorities drawn from my conversations with voters like you over the past 4 months. Number 1, Ward First representation. 2, a property tax cut. 3, repeal blanket rezoning. 4, a focus on basics. 5, safe streets, transit, and combating anti-Semitism. And 6, working with, not against the province. And my 6 for 6 action plan is backed by my record. As a 4-term Conservative MP, I helped resolve nearly 70,000 constituent issues with a 90% success rate. I help lower taxes of every kind, lower violent crime and put more police on streets, deliver millions to communities for basics like sewers, roads, bridges, and wastewater treatment. And I help govern our country through the worst farm income crisis in a century, the worst recession since the Great Depression, through the rise of global terrorism. No other candidate in front of you has done that. Put my proven experience to work for you. On October 20th, I ask you to vote for me, Jeff Watson, a proven conservative with experience and a record of results. Vote Jeff Watson, City Council, Ward 6, for change you can trust. Thank you.
We're going to move on to Joanne.
Hello, I'm Joanne Birce. For 31 years, I've lived in Ward 6. I've raised my family here, and I've built strong ties with my neighbors, community associations, small businesses, and leaders at every level of government. I bring real-world experience, having worked in oil and gas, education, and the nonprofit sector. I've also run my own business for 20 years as an operations and administrative consultant, helping other small businesses and nonprofits. A counselor's job has two main parts. First of all, to be an ombudsman to you, the residents of our community. We are here to help you navigate City Hall, and we're here to fight for what's important to your neighborhoods. Secondly, we act as kind of like a board director for Calgary. Councillors don't run operations. They don't run the business of City Hall. But what we do is we push for transparencies. We push for careful analysis, and we push for unconventional solutions. We don't need softball exchanges. We need councillors that will be looking for spending and planning that makes sense and pushing for transparencies. For too long, we've had meetings at City Hall that have been closed, and that needs to stop. I'm running for City Council for 3 reasons. First of all, blanket rezoning. 88% of those that provided feedback were against the policy, and they went ahead with it anyways. That's wrong. Secondly, we need to prioritize our core essential services. The water main break was a clear indicator to me that our City Council is focusing on not prioritizing infrastructure, and infrastructure should be key as we look to grow our city. Thirdly, community safety should be top of mind, and what I've seen is an increase in crime in our neighborhoods through increased prowlings of cars, garages. We have encampments going into our city parks. And my vision is simple: core essential services. We should be focusing on the core essential services, prioritizing infrastructure, and we need to empower our first responders so that they can do the job to make our communities safer.
30 seconds.
I'm deeply motivated by the Rotary motto of service above self. I've lived that my whole life, and I will bring that to you as your city councillor. I don't just talk results, I show up. And I work hard. I don't mind getting my hands dirty. And I will be there and at council meetings and to support you and that's my commitment to Ward 6 residents. I'm ready to work hard for you, and I ask for your vote and your trust on October 20th.
Move on to Inam.
Hello, everyone. My name is Inam Teja, and before I get started, I just want to say thank you so much to the organizers. I know how much work it is to be a volunteer on a community association board, and planning an event with hundreds of people is not easy. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity that you guys have provided for us to be able to connect with some of the voters in Ward 6. So as you know, my name is Inam Teja, and I'm running to be the next councillor in Ward 6. I love Calgary. I was born here. I grew up just across Bow Trail in Patterson, and now I live in Springbank Hill. This place is my home. It's where I learned to ride a bike. It's where my family still lives, and it's where I'd like to spend the rest of my life. I've taken a few breaks from Calgary over the years. I did my undergrad in business in Western Ontario. I worked abroad in finance for a number of years. And most recently, I completed my Master's in Public Policy at Oxford. Since then, I've been working at the Calgary Drop-In Centre on affordable housing projects to serve the people in need in our city. I've always come back to Calgary because this place is home. My family came to Canada in the 70s. And when they arrived, my dad lived in affordable housing. My mom studied in our libraries. And my grandparents took transit to get everywhere. My family relied on these basic services and infrastructure from our city to get ahead. And it's really paid off. My dad now runs a small business that employs dozens of Calgarians and does the accounting work for companies that employ thousands more. My mom is a Girl Guide leader who actually ran the Girl Guide troop right out of this very building. Our city set my family up for success, and it's allowed me to live a very good life. I want to make sure that all Calgarians have those same opportunities. They have those basic services they need to get ahead, to give back, and to thrive. And that's why I'm running to be your next city councillor.
We're gonna last finish with John.
Thank you so much. And thank you once again for organizing such an amazing event and for all of you for attending on such an absolutely beautiful Sunday. For the past 9 months, my campaign team and I have been door knocking. We've hit 36,000 doors, we've taken 2.5 million steps. I literally am on my third pair of shoes. And there's been clear priorities that have been identified by Calgarians. They want smart spending, thoughtful development, and safe streets. Let's talk about those. Smart spending is not an 8.9% increase in property tax last year. In fact, City Hall just announced that they want to have almost 6% increase again this year on top of what the province will probably work on. I'm a business leader, 25 years downtown, 5 years as a CEO. The city is a business. It's not about making money. It's about executing flawlessly on roads, sidewalks, water, sewer, power, those core services that make Calgary an amazing city. You cannot have a scenario when costs continue to increase and service levels keep decreasing. It's not sustainable. And let's put a business leader that has the 25 years experience on October 20th to help make that change. Thoughtful development. We've held numerous town halls with community members in Ward 6, and the overwhelming message is blanket rezoning does not work. We will end blanket rezoning when elected into council. A city as diverse as Calgary, not just in its people, but in its communities, it makes no sense. And here's my big issue. Ignore the fact it rips apart communities. Ignore the fact it brings down property values. My challenge is a lack of connection back to the elected official as a Calgarian. That's not how we do democracy in Calgary and in Canada, and we're going to change that on October 20th. And finally, safe streets. Unfortunately, what Calgarians are feeling, the data supports that. Our cop to pop ratio, where you've got sworn officers to population, has been decreasing. We just saw the other 3-4 days ago an announcement, 19% of our police force are on some sort of leave. That is unacceptable. It is a clear misguide from council not investing in the core services that make sense for Calgarians. We have to change it. We're making an intergenerational investment downtown Calgary. A green line, a rink, an arts common. If we do not invest in public safety now, we do not feel safe as Calgarians going to see train. Feel safe to go downtown, come in our communities. That will be an investment for non, and that's something that's going to change. Very quickly about myself, 25 years in business, 5 years as CEO, created multiple jobs, created millions of dollars of economic activity in the city of Calgary. But one of my best opportunities is serving as board chair of 2 public companies, and more importantly, the Calgary Parking Authority. When I was there, I worked directly, reported into council, and we were able to get the largest investment ever. The parking downtown on 9th Avenue across from the library, that was when I was chairperson. I can work with government, I can work with business proven leadership. So looking forward to the questions from the community because that's what matters, because ultimately as council, we are accountable to you. Thank you so much.
All right, we're gonna move into our first question here. And we're gonna start with Joanne for answering. Question reads, the Calgary Chamber of Commerce recently stated, growth is outpacing our ability to welcome and support Calgarians. Given the pressures that come with a rapidly growing city such as infrastructure, affordability, and quality of life, do you believe it's possible to manage or temper growth? How should the city approach this challenge?
Thank you. It is true, our population is increasing at an ever alarming rate. And if you look at jobs, job creation is not keeping up with population growth. So jobs for our young people has been a struggle. I think as a city council, we need to look at, again, focusing on the core services, that we're not wasting taxpayer money on things that don't benefit all taxpayers and Calgarians. I think that needs to be the focus for the next 4 years as we're growing and, you know, our resources are taxed. We need to really be wise about how we're taxing our money. How we're spending tax money. And so I do believe that next city council, with proper guidance by a mayor and a council that is supportive, should be focusing on core services and not wasting money on nice to haves.
Thanks, Joanne. I'm just going to ask everybody if you could keep your applause until the very end of our debate. That would be awesome because we're just going to try and get through as many questions as possible. So we're going to move on to Inam.
It's a great question, and I think it's one of the biggest challenges facing our city today. There's about 100,000 people moving to Calgary every year. This can be seen as something that is really difficult and bad, but I truly believe that growth is an opportunity. Being a growing city is so much better than being a shrinking city. We just need to set people up for success. That means making sure that folks don't get squeezed out of housing, that we have enough housing for our growing population. It means that we're investing in the communities that are growing. We've seen in West District a massive jump in our population. We need to see the services increase there. Better transit, more rec opportunities, a new library. This is the time to invest in our people. And I also think we do need to nail that basic infrastructure. With 100,000 people coming here every year, it is a real challenge. Our fire department is down 7 fire halls from what they would like. We are certainly behind when it comes to water infrastructure and basics. I think the responsible thing to do is invest in our people. Growth is a positive for a city if we're able to set people up, and that's what a city should be doing.
Okay, we're going to move on to John.
Thank you so much. In any complex multi-billion-dollar organization, tone comes from the top, and you can clearly see the decisions and implications of a lack of investment, a lack of foresight. We were chatting with somebody before here and realizing, fail to plan to fail. And that lack of leadership comes from lack of business sense and lack of accountability. We have 14 councillors, 1 mayor, and not one has ever served in a senior leadership position in business. We don't need 14, you need 1. And you can see the decisions. We have to invest. Go into the annual report of the city of Calgary right now and do a search. As a CEO, that's where I look at my peers. I look at what are they doing. And when I look at my peers, we talk about efficiency, optimization, tone from the top, doing things quicker, faster, stronger. You do not hear that at City Hall. You need a business lens. You need a leader that understands how government works and also understands how business works. People say, John, the city isn't business. Yes, it is. As chairperson of the Calgary Parking Authority, we face the same issues, unions, cost overruns, inflation, whatever, you name, whatever the reason, procurement, etc. Yet we cut operating costs 18% because we empower. We came into a room similar to this, myself as chair and Glenn Furtado as the general manager, and said, look, revenues are falling. We have to. We'll get 3 North Stars. Asset integrity, quality of product, and customer satisfaction. We need those North Stars at the city of Calgary. 100,000 people moved to Calgary like I did 25 years ago for economic opportunity, quality of life. That includes investing in parks. That includes investing in infrastructure and roads. We have to. And we have to make those a priority. We talked about policing. It's a whole package. It's not one. We have to invest that. How do we do that? Tone from the top. Bring that efficiency. I saw it. When you knock on doors, I've asked, I think I've met 600, we've documented, 600 of the Calgary, City of Calgary employees. And I asked them a simple question. What do you want from your councillor? Accountability, purpose, and enough of these pet projects. And after the conversation, every single one says, John, if you bring that vision, that business lens into City Hall and work and collaborate, good things are going to happen. So I commend the City Chamber of Commerce for recognizing that and telling us, the hopefully elected officials, these are the priorities, but it's tone from the top, and that's your expectation. Joanne mentioned it's a board of directors. It is a board of directors, and I would suggest the chairperson of the board is the mayor, and you have to have that accountability. You have to be able to go and tell them, but tone from the top, and let's have a business leader that has 25 years experience setting that tone from the top. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff?
We have to remember that part of the reason we're having problems managing growth is that we didn't have a council or a mayor up to the task of managing growth. This current council had 9 rookies who lacked any experience in governing. And I'll tell you, the city is not a business. The city is a government. You don't elect a CEO like John for an energy company like his, but you do elect a mayor and you do elect a council. And I bring significant experience to the task. I think 3 things are important. One, obviously, we have to get housing right. And that means we have to get the regulatory environment right. Developers are going to make money and they're going to build no matter what the regulatory environment is, but we have to get the balance right with our communities first, because the decision about housing starts with who lives in the community and it works out from there. Second, core services. Council has yet to take a decision on what constitutes a core service and what constitutes a non-core service. If we're going to reinforce core services, you have 2 options. One, you can do the easy thing, tax more, spend more. I've seen lots of politicians do that in my time in government. Or you can figure out from things that are not essential where we can find savings and lower that spending so we can reinforce our core services. That's going to be critical. I would suggest we probably need a freeze on approving new mega projects until we can figure out how we can pay for and plan for the assets we currently have and the new ones that are coming on stream, like Green Line and the new arena downtown. And finally, I would suggest we need to stop fighting or picking fights, council does, the mayor does, with senior levels of government, like the province. One of the reasons I'm running on getting along or working with, not against the province, is we need them for a number of factors that are important here. For major infrastructure projects, you need their help funding. If you are going to deal with social disorder downtown, we don't need a supervised hard drug consumption site. What we need is actual addiction treatment beds. So why do we pick a fight with the province over those issues? I have a record. I have worked with other levels of government. I have worked with international governments to deliver priorities for a community. I'd like to put that experience to work for you in managing our growth smartly in Calgary. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go to Joanne. Response. Is it not working?
Started that.
Right. Just wondering if you have a rebuttal. Apologies, I've never moderated a debate before.
I don't have a rebuttal, but what I'd like to add is that when you're looking at growth of a city like Calgary, we really need to focus on the efficiencies that are important in helping us to achieve what we need to. And that includes really looking within City Hall. I believe, in 2020, they did run a pilot project called SAVE. And what that project did is it went to all of the departments, front level staff, managers, supervisors, asked them to look for efficiencies from within. And after that exercise was done, they found $80 million in savings. And so as a city council, we need to be pushing for these programs on an annual basis. And if we're going to grow, and we're going to have the funds we need to grow our city properly and invest in what we need to make this the best city ever, we need to be looking for efficiencies from within.
Yeah, I think my core statement here that differs from everybody else on this stage is I think that when we have the funds, we need to invest them, not offer the tax cuts. I'd love to see property tax going down, but we have bigger needs right now when it comes to our lack of fire stations. We have bigger needs right now when it comes to our lack of police that are on the ground. We have bigger needs when it comes to our lack of affordable housing and the lack of investment in transit and recreation for new communities. As we grow, I don't think a freeze on projects is what we need. We actually need more. We need to make sure that we're putting our funds and spending them wisely. I'm all about making sure we find the efficiencies and, making sure that we have a project safe sounds like a great idea, but that money needs to be reinvested into our communities. We can't be like sticking our heads in the sand about this growth and pretending that everything goes away. We actually need to get ahead of it.
John?
Thank you. Can you hear the answers? I go back to my comment about tone from the top, the experience of actually leading multi-directional, multi-billion-dollar organizations and the complexities that's in there. You cannot make statements, cut here and come back. You have to have clear vision, you have to have clear purpose. And the comment about business, when I think of business, what is a business? I wrote it down. It's accountability, it's trust, it's flawless execution. By paying those property taxes into your city hall, you have an obligation, you have an expectation from your elected officials as well as administration. And that is that sense we bring back to City Hall. You can see it, Calgary is a city of innovators, entrepreneurs. Think of that when you go into the annual report, not one word about efficiency, not one word about optimization. I actually agree with that. As savings, wouldn't it be amazing, like in business, when I go to my team, you save $1, we'll give you another $1 because you prove it. I would love to be able to go to parks and say, instead of spending 100, spend 90, because Calgarians are going to experience this amazing uplift and that extra 10 on savings. Let's reinvest it. Let's make parks better. Let's make Calgary better. And now you've created that incentive. You've taken that business perspective and business lens into City Hall and creating a culture, and that's what's missing. You have to see that. At the end of the day, we've met hundreds of Calgarians who work at City Hall, and it's toned from the top. There's good people that work there. They have no vision. They have no value. The fact that it came out, it's here what Councillor said, 5.9% increase. People shrug at one study and read it. Are you crazy? When you're adding something like population growth and inflation, it doesn't make sense. It starts at tone from the top. You have to be accommodating. You have to be able to work together. We're going to speak to that. Is the end of the day, any policy requires 8 votes. You need to be able to have a recommendation and work with 7 other councillors to get that initiative forward. That's something I've done at the board level every day. Thank you.
Jeff?
Thank you. Let me make a few points here. One, to extend my comments further, one thing you do when you're governing is you don't panic. And, we experienced extraordinary growth beyond normal growth rates in Calgary. City Council panicked in terms of what to do about housing, and they mistakenly thought that they were going to build their way out of this. When in fact, it's demand side changes that ultimately result in whether we can manage growth or not. Look at Texas. They had extremely high rates of growth a few years ago for about 2 or 3 years. And now they're having a retreat in prices and affordability because the demand has changed. It's lowered. And we need to be looking at demand side solutions as cities, talking to the federal government about how we continue with the appropriate caps on immigration, for example, so that we lower demand side for the demand side for housing. Secondly, when it comes to the question, and I know this by experience, our government could walk and chew gum. We could cut taxes and we could fortify spending for infrastructure. And we did it with a $278 billion enterprise. And we scrutinized those results. If we had to find savings, we could identify. I participated in a deficit reduction action plan where we found 5 to 7% per department in where to find the savings. It's about priority, but it's also about experience. And I have that experience and I'd look to put that to work for you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next question. What are your positions on blanket rezoning? John, I know you've already stated this, but you're going to restate it again here. Oh, just a minute. How would you balance resident concerns such as school overcrowding with the need for affordable housing? So we're actually going to start with Inam this time. Yeah.
Great question. It's one I hear often on the doors. I'd like to start by saying, just saying repeal blanket rezoning is not a solution, it's a slogan. I think we need to fix blanket rezoning. I think we need to get to a better point where it comes to our community consultations. However, we're just sending things backwards. We can't go back to the days where council spends 40% of their time debating townhomes only to approve 95% of them. We can't go back to the days where rents are jumping by hundreds of dollars a month. And we can't jeopardize the hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding when it comes to repealing blanket rezoning. What we can do is actually chart a plan forward that works. By the time the next council gets elected, we will have 2 years of data. And I've knocked on tens of thousands of doors, and I've heard a lot of the concerns. We need to fix the parking. We need to make sure that we have preservation of old trees. We need to make sure that we're addressing the privacy issues when it comes to windows, looking into windows. And we have a plan for that. But we can't just do a knee-jerk reaction, send us back years, and pretend that the problem is solved. We need to chart a path forward. Like with many things, there's a middle ground solution to be found. We can't go forward with what our current council has put forward, but we can't just knee-jerk and go backwards. We need to actually look to what will work for the future.
John?
Thank you. As I expressed in my opening comments, one of my major concerns is that fact that Calgarians do not have a voice at City Council as part of blanket rezoning. I had the privilege of helping a group in Ward 6 get to City Hall and postpone a vote. And their only ask was not rejected, amended, give us a voice. And I will fight for a voice of Calgarians because that's the right thing. I come from an oil and gas background. And I tell my teams, you call your landowner the month before, the week before, the day before, the day of, the day after, because it comes back to building trust. And we have lost trust with City Hall. It was rushed through. I had the privilege of speaking against it as one of the 700 folks that went down there and saying this is madness, this is rip apart communities, and guess what it has? We've held town halls, we've talked to Calgarians. It does not work. And we have to turn around. Talk to those Calgarians when you knock on those doors, 36,000. Go down and realize what's happening in communities. It makes no sense. And I'll even go further as a business person. I've reached out and talked to dozens of developers and said, look, I'm a business person, explain to me. Not one has come in and said, this is the solution. You know what their solution is? It takes me 18 months to get an approval downtown, make it 18 weeks. Thank you. That is a business solution. That is a solution that works. Nobody's asking for the apex. They'll do it. I'm not mad at the business owners. They'll knock down that place in cul-de-sac and who cares and put an apex, don't worry about parking and whatnot. But nobody's asking for it. In business, you look, what problem are we trying to solve?
30 seconds.
So fundamentally, if the developers don't want it, Calgarians don't want it, we had a system that, yes, it used to be tweaks, but it generally worked because Calgarians had voices. Let's go back to where Calgarians have that voice, where business makes sense. We can meet the demand of the needs of housing. Thank you.
Jeff?
There's no wrong side for the microphone. Don't worry about that. Remember that Calgary isn't a city, it's a city of unique communities. That's what makes us special. Sadly, Mayor Bondeck and her majority ignored this fact when they pushed ahead with blanket rezoning. Again, I think it's the evidence of a rookie council to be able to press ahead with somehow not understanding who it is they're supposed to be listening to and who it is they're supposed to follow. They had no problem following what the City Hall Planning Department did, but somehow they had a problem following you. I can assure you, from 11 and a half years experience as a member of Parliament, I understand who hires and who fires and where the accountability is. And it's with each of you. But blanket rezoning wasn't just the worst thing to happen. They're cooking up a new land use bylaw that's going to be worse than that. They're going to take other zoning designations and collapse them into about 3 or 4 categories with more of it on density overdrive and fewer opportunities for you to have your chance to say something about what happens in your own community. Now, I spoke at City Council. I was on panel 139, and I gave a bit of friendly advice from experience in government. You can reduce red tape. That means you cut regulations, but you don't use a regulation to cut the government. The government is a legitimate order of government. It makes decisions and it helps balance what is the public interest and the developer interest. So I'll vote to repeal blanket rezoning as job 1. restore the public hearing, restore council's power to refuse RCG applications, and if developers don't work with the community, I'll vote against it, and I'll encourage my council to do the same, council colleagues.
No clapping, please, until after the debate. Joanne?
I am also in favor of repealing blanket rezoning. What blanket rezoning identified to everybody in Calgary is that residents and community associations do not have a voice. The largest stakeholders of our communities no longer have a voice. That needs to change. I do think we need to densify, but it needs to be done in the right places. So transit-oriented development is key. Underused commercial sites are a great place to also densify. Anywhere where you have close access to public transit, where people can get to work very easily, to school. And we have a lot of newcomers and young people that cannot afford to buy a home. Blanket rezoning is not creating affordable housing in our communities. It just isn't. So this needs to change. We need to repeal this policy. And I would like to see a more balanced approach. Yes, we need to do some inner city development, there's no doubt. But we have the land. We can do some urban sprawl. So I'm going to leave it at that. But I do think we need to go back to the drawing board of what development looks like. So I'm in favor of repealing blanket rezoning. Let's focus more on infrastructure capacity reviews. Let's make sure there's parking, that we have enough schools in our communities, that the congestion isn't going to be overwhelming for our citizens.
Inam, do you have a response?
Thank you. I think all of the folks on this stage brought up good points about making sure that residents have a voice. And I'm with you on that. I think we need to have a better process when it comes to actually hearing the voices of people who live in these communities. And I certainly don't agree with how the current council has handled this, because I think it is flawed. But just because it's flawed does not mean that we don't work to fix it. We can't just take the lazy solution out and say, oh, we'll get rid of it, go back to all the old problems without looking forward to what we can actually fix. So I agree, we need to address the parking. We need to address the school capacity issues. We need to solve the next problems, not go back to the old problems.
John?
Thank you for that. I bring back the trust, and it simply just comes down to that voice. And no matter what, the voice of Calgarians needs to be heard. One of the most disappointing things I heard from City Hall recently was an announcement that said we've actually improved our process by 6 weeks as a result of blanket rezoning. You know what that 6 weeks was? Not having Calgarians' voice heard. That's unacceptable. If that's the only efficiency you can get by not listening to Calgarians, I want nothing to it. You have to come back and make better choices. But more importantly, we all talked about this blanket rezoning, that. You need 7 votes in addition. Who is the councillor that's going to get that? Look at your experience. If I stand up and say end blanket rezoning and 13 other councillors and the mayor vote for it, it's over, we're done, never to be seen again. You have to build consensus. You have to go back to who has the experience, who has served on boards as chair. I started as director. You work up to a chair out of trust and respect. They know that you get things done. You know you can execute. I've worked at levels of government, the biggest investment in the Calgary Parking Authority's history. I'm fundamentally pro-development in a city that has 100,000 people living in it per year, but it has to be thoughtful. It has to engage with the community where it makes sense, where the infrastructure is there, where the citizens want it. We can actually accommodate the growth, schools, parking, transit, everything. Thank you.
Jeff?
To my good friend, Mr. Teja, the mistake wasn't in the details of blanket rezoning, it's the decision to approve blanket rezoning, and the only way you're gonna fix it is to repeal it.
Yeah.
And I promise you, I will repeal that on day one. This is a change election, and it is a referendum on blanket rezoning. And the candidates who stood in favor of it are going to lose, and the ones who are going to win are the ones in favor of it. Now, I posit this to you. Who up here is going to do what they say they will do? I will give you 2 numbers, 0 and 1,677. That's the number of times I stood on my feet and voted in the House of Commons on my principles and what I said I was going to do and what I was going to do to deliver for the communities I represented. 0 is the number of times they've stood on their feet to vote for anything. So with me, you can take it to the bank. We're gonna get this done. We're gonna kill the draft bylaw that's gonna put over densification on steroids. And we're gonna strengthen local area plans to not stop at built form, but to talk about what zoning the communities can expect with their participation in that for what kind of housing forms are gonna come when we redevelop established communities.
This is a question for Mr. Watson. How many times have you stood up in any of our communities in Ward 6 and done anything on any board?
No funding.
It's fair enough. The answer to that is zero. But what have I done for Calgary and our communities? I can tell you that I've helped with premiers, 2 premiers as a matter of fact, to help them in terms of what they are doing in government. I can tell you that I have helped, if you will, working for members of cabinet in their responsibilities to deliver on responsibilities for Calgary. And of course, when I was a member of parliament, let's remember, voted to reduce taxes of every kind to benefit Albertans. I fought for the oil and gas sector against the crazy environmental zealots who wanted to shut it down. Johnny would never have a company if they weren't back then. And I will tell you that our policies resulted in the creation of over 400,000 Alberta jobs. That's work in the public interest, and that's work that's helped Calgary. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to question 3, and we're gonna give you guys 2 minutes to answer this question. Please state how much money has been donated to your campaign by developers, and how do you manage the relationship between developers and resident concerns? And we're gonna start this one off with John.
As of today, the number is 0. The balance between developer and citizen is core, because you've got business and customer and government. And I bring a unique perspective coming from an oil and gas background, where it is, to use words from Ford, job one, you have to engage. Our company, one of our companies, is actually developing 100 megawatts of solar in Camrose, Alberta. We have a list of all landowners and every single email, correspondence, and concern. And the regulator stands in front of us and says, John, have you addressed? John, have you addressed? John, have you addressed? City Hall is, we summarize 1,427 complaints into a heat map. That's unacceptable. A commitment is bringing people together. Actions speak louder than words. Our campaign put together several town halls. We invited members of the community. We invited experts, lawyers, realtors to talk and empower and get together. My commitment is you need to get them in the same room. Many years ago, I had the privilege of helping get a school built in our community, West Ridge. And I distinctly remember you had the provincial, the Calgary Board of Education and the city were all sort of fighting and pointing. And we got together, our community went to Old City Hall and sort of put our backs to the door and locked the doors, got everybody in the room and just said, hey, we need a school. That's job one. And I'll never forget after the 2 meetings, magically all the problems disappeared. Oh, I didn't think the city did this, that. It's engagement, it's getting it together. My first question to every single developer that comes in, have you engaged with the community? And engagement is not just simply, I sent a form, I had 500 flyers. I told the developer, my volunteers delivered 5,000 flyers on one Saturday. My apologies, 500 flyers is not engagement. Engagement is talking. And that's my commitment. If you do not have engagement, you will not have a project. If you have engagement, you've met the community. We don't need consensus. You need trust and accountability. Thank you.
Jeff?
Thank you. The number is 0. More than that, I made a commitment that I would not take $1 from a special interest. Why? Because at the end of the day, there's an expectation from them that you'll do something for them. I know that by experience, having been a member of parliament for 4 terms. Let me tell you what I encountered. I encountered high-level corruption, for example. When we were trying to build a new international bridge between the city of Windsor and Detroit, I had a billionaire send his son to come and talk to me in my office, and he said, we need access. We need a decision from your government that will stop that process so that our bridge can compete, or wouldn't have to compete, but could preserve its monopoly. They said, Jeff, we'll build a community center with your name on it. Jeff will come to every one of your fundraisers. And the list went on on and on. And at the end, I remember him lowering his head. And he looked at me and he said, Jeff, name your price. Now, I don't know about you. I told him to get the F out of my office. He has a long guy. But I'll tell you, I thought about it after, and I think about it today. How many politicians would have cashed that check and nobody would have known? But I'll tell you, I would have known. So I don't want to be beholden to anybody except you. It's one of the reasons, for example, I didn't run for a city political party. Why? Because you want, and I want the same thing, straight line accountability. You hire, I respect you, I do the action plan of your priorities, or I get fired by you. That I know. So I'm ready to get to work for you, and you only. Thank you.
Joanne?
I decided to run to be the voice for communities and community associations and residents first. That will not change. I've had 0 donations from developers as well. They're giving money to somebody, but it's not us apparently. Anyways, my key focus is on communities and community associations. I will always make you the priority. If there's a developer that comes to me as a counselor and wants to develop, I will be encouraging to meet with the community associations early, to meet with residents early, and I will only vote in favor if the project makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, if it's in the wrong place, if we don't have the proper infrastructure in place, it'll be a no-go for me.
And Inam.
I think transparency is absolutely critical, and it's something we need to see more of at City Hall. I'm committed to fully disclosing all of my donors before the election. I can't tell you how many individual donors we've had, but the overwhelming majority of my funds have come from individuals in our community. I've also received some donations from small businesses, and I'm not sure entirely where the breakdown is, but the full disclosure will be made available before the election because I'm committed to making sure that we are transparent. I'm also committed to making sure that there are no special interests that dictate votes. I agree with you, Jeff. They come up, but you have to be able to maintain your independence. And speaking of the party, I'm committed to voting for Ward 6. There will be no whipped votes when it comes to any party matters. And so you can trust that the transparency and accountability will be there because I will disclose all of my donations, and I challenge the rest of the folks on the stage to do so before Election Day, and committed to no whip votes with any party structures. And I'm sure there'll be a question where I can elaborate on that later.
Can you answer the question? Yeah.
So I'm not entirely certain which of the small businesses have any stakes in the development field. I will disclose all of them. They'll be coming out very shortly. The disclosure will happen at the end of the month.
Okay, in the interest of time, we're just gonna do a 1-minute rebuttal because we have waffles. Very, very important. So we're gonna just start with John.
Great. Yeah, so very quick, I think go back to history repeats itself and imagine what a councillor looks like, what they're doing during the campaign, what they've done in their careers. We brought together communities, we brought together people in halls like this, talking just like back there to talk and discuss what's important to them. Imagine what we could do when we have the privilege of serving folks in Ward 6. We go back to the parties expanding at the irony is all of us will be disclosing our donations. We've actually one of the first people to file. We have a September 30th deadline that's legislated by the city of Calgary and the province. So you'll be able to have lens exactly who is donating funds. It's not we're doing a favor. It actually is a requirement, and all of us will see there. We'll get to see who's backing all the candidates. Thank you so much.
Jeff?
Okay, there's no better metaphor for what's going wrong in this city than city councilors being in the small building, the old city hall, in the shadow of this mammoth municipal building downtown. There's nothing worse about accessibility to your council than the fact that they're there instead of an office in the constituency. They're accessible to special interests, they're accessible to the bureaucrats, and their thinking is down at City Hall. My ward first representation, I want to make sure that we have constituency offices in our wards like they do at provincial and federal, so that our brain is here and that the special interests are not going to have the privileged access to us. Second, if we're going to talk about what's working in the public interest, when I was parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Transport in the immediate aftermath of the tragic train derailment in Gigantic, I had to work to help the top 20 bureaucrats fix 20 years of undone work in rail safety and to do it in 18 months. And we got the job done. I'm here on your side.
Joanne?
Just simple, communities first, citizens first, developers way down the line. You will always be the focus, and developers will need to work through us to work with you. And I will leave that.
And finally, Inam.
I never want to lie to anyone. And so for me, making sure that I have numbers straight and making sure that I have the proper disclosures is important. I could come up here and pretend like nothing has ever happened when it comes to, the kinds of, I could come up here and lie and pretend like I've never received a donation from a business before. That's not the case. I will fully disclose all of the donations that are made, and I'm very committed to the transparency so that you can look and check and see all of the donations that have come in. But at the end of the day, regardless of whether or not someone has given any money, the votes come from the people, and I'm committed to that ideal. I believe strongly in representation. It's why I've worked so hard when it comes to things like my work at the drop-in center, my work at the community association. Being in community is critical.
All right, I'm excited to say that we're gonna judge them on their waffles. Yeah, you guys. I just wanted to give Melissa Centofanti a quick shout out because she has been doing this for over 20 years, putting on these types of debates. And she's organized volunteers and organized this food piece. So what's going to happen is you guys are going to pick up a, oh, you're gonna come and explain it. Hey.
Yeah, so if you want to go around, you're gonna grab a plate. There's coffee and water as well. And you'll go to D first, and you'll have to track which waffle is which. So that afterwards you can go vote at the table over there on my left. It's on your right. So the line should start on my right or your left. So if you want to just start lining up for waffles, we'll be there to serve. And don't forget to vote.
All right, we're gonna kick off into the second part of our debate. We dealt with development in the first part, so the second part will be a little bit different. Still the same format. This time we're going to start with John. I just wanted to thank Live Straw very quickly for being here as well. He is a media guy. My poor phone, things you think they'd be indestructible. Anyways, yeah, just thank you to Live Sprawl for coming and live streaming this debate. If you guys want to watch it afterwards, it's going to be available on your web or on their website. We'll also have it posted on our community association websites as well. Okay, so question 4. Our ward feels there has been an uptick in vandalism, crime, and encampments. These are genuine safety concerns. A recent report noted 20% of Calgary police are on mental or physical disability. What concrete steps would you take to bolster community safety and support first responders?
Thank you so much for the question, whoever raised it, and it was one of the core 3 that we talked about: safe streets, smart spending, and thoughtful development. And core to any community is feeling safe where you live. I still fundamentally believe Calgary is a safe city. There are cracks. We see that around the C train. In fact, family members of mine choose not to take the train because they feel unsafe. Go downtown and you see lawlessness there, as well as in the ward. Concrete actions simply puts getting our cop to pop ratio back to where it was before. We went from 150 for 15, 20 years. I moved to Calgary 25 years ago. Safe city, we started to see that deterioration. It's an investment. It's not just throwing officers at it. Imagine you got 100,000 people. The city of Red Deer moved to Calgary last year, and yet you have that deterioration. It's reflecting in that 20% mental health. That's a problem. That is a huge problem. Where you have officers, you can hear the police commission saying we cannot invest. Oh my goodness, we can't bring up. Makes sense. You can't bring officers up there right away. A concrete on a C train. Here's an example. I come from a business factory pilot, and you experiment. If nobody has the right answers, here's an example. Let's put a safety security guard in every single station. You do 10 stations, it'll be $1 million. I'm a business person. If you know that in 30 seconds, I ask my friends and neighbors that if you go to the next stop, no matter what's happening, you'll feel safe. Someone's going to help you there. The business case is that 500 Calgarians choose to use transit because they feel safe in a city of 1.7. That's a pretty low percentage. You will more than pay for it. Now you do this culture. The best time when I take the train is stampede at 10 o'clock. You've got seniors, you've got kids, you've got business people, everything. It's busy, it's exciting. Why is it safe? Because it's busy. When I started as a young professional, we took transit and it was safe, it was busy. We have to invest. There's no other way about it. We are a growing city from 1.7, 2 million, like that. And we don't address the problems. I spoke about it before. Billions of dollars being invested in downtown Calgary. We have to have safety as a priority one, because if people choose not to take transit, don't feel safe downtown at all days, and there's going to be problems there. Thank you.
Hey, Jeff.
Thank you. Every year, under Mayor Godek and our council majority, we've had a new worst in our city. 2022, Calgary saw 127 shootings. In 2023, transit crime was up, and Calgary also experienced its highest homicide rate ever. And since October 7th, 2023, we have a problem with anti-Semitism in our community. I can tell you some of the steps that it's going to take to address some of these issues. Number one, let me say this first off, it's not going to be with Calgary Police Service alone. There are some issues to deal with. One is increased recruitment. We need more officers. You're going to hear a lot about that. And two, they also have to have the right plan, right? And council has to play a role in ensuring that in exchange for the budget dollars that they need, that they have an effective plan. Break and enters, for example, which you might experience in communities around here, the migration of crime, because we have an open transit system without turnstiles. Break and enter may seem like a small thing, the police won't deal with it, but it's the natural expression of what's happening at a larger level. Organized crime and drug trade. And do they have the right plan to disrupt those things? that will play out on your street, whether they do. I can tell you the other problem on the issue of police who are burned out, it's not just do they have the right staffing levels, there is a culture problem inside of police. You can talk to rank and file officers, and they will tell you that they have issues with low morale, and they have issues, you know, if you're a female officer in particular, they think I have a culture issue with whether women officers are respected properly internally. To get those problems fixed, you need the leverage of your council budget to get them fixed. And lastly, I'll say this, I think we do need to return to the question of closed transit system, turnstiles. One, it will capture important revenue that we're currently missing. Two, it will help us in the migration from one community to another.
Okay, Joanne?
I would agree with Jeff. We definitely need to do something else with our transit. Turnstiles would be a great first step. I also don't think we should have a free zone in our downtown core. I think we should be looking to cities like Vancouver, where they have, you pay your transit according to zone. I think this would deter some of the crime taking place on transit, in transit stations, and that kind of thing. I know seniors who won't take transit. I know young people who won't take transit. And I have a police officer friend who won't let his mom take transit. So transit is a huge issue. And what happens with transit, it's coming to our neighborhoods. As we expand our transit lines, the crime follows. I'm also hearing from residents around Ward 6, especially in Wentworth, Signal Hill, that since the opening of Stony, they've seen an increase in crime in their community. There's easy access points in and out of their communities. And the bottom line is we need to increase funding to our first responders, to the police. We need to give them the tools to do their job correctly and right, and to be present in those situations where we need the most. If we increase funding, it increases the amount of officers on the street and decreases the response time. So that is key. And as far as safety goes, I think that's the direction we need to take.
Okay, and Inam?
Everybody deserves to feel safe in our city. And we know that right now, that's not the case. The approach that I take to addressing safety is one that pairs the enforcement side with the social services. Because just having more cops on our train station to write people tickets doesn't actually solve problems. People will get a ticket and they'll be there the next day. What we need is pathways out for folks. We need to invest in the addictions treatment spaces. We need to invest in our affordable housing. We need to make sure that we have that connection between our social services and outreach folks with our police. For so many reasons, we're seeing more and more of our police folks burn out. And the challenge is that they're being sent to do medical work. The number of times that our folks in Calgary Police Services are using naloxone to revive people takes a toll. We need to make sure that we have the appropriate people addressing the appropriate calls. And that means making sure that we have those folks to get out and making sure that police are able to have their capacity freed up to focus on investigating some of the neighborhood level crime. They should be following up when there's a break-in, when there's vandalism, when there's the stealing of the plaques from the Heart House. We need to make sure that our police are addressing those issues, and we need to make sure that we have the solutions for folks who are treating our train stations as backup shelters and who are using encampments behind our bottle depots as a place to stay, because that's not okay.
Okay, for this round of rebuttals, I want you, or the candidates, to respond to each other's statements and don't restate your own statement. You can pass if you choose. So we're gonna start off with John.
Perfect. The one comment I'd make is back of investment. There's been a chronic underinvestment in city infrastructure, and our safety services are there as well. So we do need to start there. When you have 100,000 people in the city of Calgary, you do not invest, you have to start at step one. Let's get back to a base. What do you do in business, in medicine? You get a baseline, and then you build from there. And I think the ultimate comes down to you need that leadership to make those priorities. is right now, it is not a part of City Hall. I think during the election cycle, magically it's appeared, but for 3.5, 4 years it has. So you need business leaders that can look at me in the eye, make sure the budget's there, and get the capital spent towards it serves on our front lines. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to Jeff.
Yeah, the issue didn't disappear. I disagree with you on that. It's the fact that we had a working council that had no idea what they were doing in terms of priorities for the community. And I'm concerned because the next council is going to have 8 brand new faces. And are we going to send anyone there, our vote, who's actually going to know what to do, first of all, who's got a record that demonstrates what they've done on some of these issues? For me, my record is a police officer recruitment fund, getting tough on crime when we need to get tough on crime. I have a record on fighting anti-Semitism. We haven't really talked about that yet, but it is a number of hate incidents in our community toward the Jewish community is at a record, and it's a unique problem that requires a very different set of solutions. And I have a record fighting anti-Semitism. I love to bring the community together to ensure the police have the right plan. Our universities have a specific plan to combat anti-Semitism, not a general anti-discrimination plan, because that doesn't work. And to bring faith groups and not-for-profits into the discussion so that we finally have a plan and the police are part of it so we can deal with that issue. Thank you.
Okay, Joanne,
Pass.
Inam,
Well, I think, police are an important part of the response, but they can't be the only part of the response. I've talked to many police officers who've told me you can't police your way out of homelessness. And when we're talking about the business case, the most expensive place someone can spend the night is in an emergency room. The second most expensive is in our corrections facility. And the third most expensive is a shelter. Cheaper than all of these options is affordable housing. We need to be providing that pathway out for folks.
okay, we're gonna move on to another question. What do you think about climate change and how can we expect you to vote on a climate change related topic, such as city's declaration of a climate change emergency? And we're gonna start with Jeff.
Well, let's start with the obvious. Climate is changing. And so I have a record in terms of how we took a balanced approach in the federal government to addressing these issues. For one, we took a regulatory approach to ensure that we had better GHG emissions at the end of our industries had better GHG emissions at the end of their process. We didn't put in place something that was job killing or your budget killing, like a carbon tax. We fought that. But the climate emergency declaration, I want to focus in on this because I know by experience, the council voted 13-2 in favor of a climate emergency declaration. And they did so without understanding what that meant. Now, I know from government experience that the moment you have an emergency declaration, what happens? All of the planning, priorities, personnel, and the human resources decisions, budgets and funding all now align behind an emergency declaration, and it does it at the expense of considering other priorities the way it should be. Repealing the emergency declaration, so I wasn't fooled by it, but repealing the emergency declaration will allow us to do something, take smart targeted actions that actually make sense on the issue and balance them against the other priorities that we have for bolstering core services in our community. They don't have to be in tension with each other where one wins and the rest don't. And that's what it's going to take. I have the experience to understand that. Some of that, by the way, will be complementary. We look at the types of infrastructure priorities that we have in the community. We can make some of those smart things in alignment with climate change goals, but it will also prevent us from doing something else that's counterproductive. It will keep us from chasing federal dollars on things like EV buses. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been the auto sector for a long time. I understand that you get a performance discount for weather, they're heavier and they destroy our roads. So it costs us in terms of our infrastructure. There are better options available and we should pursue that at council. Thank you.
Joanne,
Like Jeff, I don't think we have a climate emergency. Yes, the climate is changing. It has been changing for thousands of years, and we're we're in a cycle now where things seem to be warming a little bit. We need to deal with that. So I think the city needs to take a more proactive approach to climate mitigation strategies. I do think that there's an awful lot of taxpayer money being spent on climate emergency initiatives. For example, YYC Charge, where you can get a charging station in your apartment building. The CEIP grant, where you can get solar panel loans for your roof of your house. I don't think these are benefiting all Calgarians. And when we look at spending taxpayer money, we need to focus on what benefits all Calgarians. So I would like to see our city focusing more on protecting our green spaces, planting more trees, stabilizing our riverbanks, restoring wetlands, water-wise landscaping, retrofitting City of Calgary buildings with more energy efficient technology. There are so many things we can do to enhance and protect our environment. We should all be environmental citizens, but it needs to be done with a common sense approach. I agree, EV buses are not the right approach for Calgary. All we had to do was look to Edmonton. We should always look to other cities to see what we can learn, whether they're good things or bad things. And that was a huge example of something where the city made a bad decision, in my opinion. The other thing we could do is we want to help the environment. Let's reduce idling time. There's a city in Quebec that uses an AI censored smart technology that syncs and looks at pedestrians, car traffic, and increases the traffic flow so people aren't idling for as long. We need to look to other jurisdictions for this.
Inam?
So what I would like to see from the city on climate change is less virtue signaling and more action. When we think about all these kind of small little things that our city is doing on climate change, they're great around the edges, but there are two really, really big things when it comes to climate change that our city needs to be better at. One is reduce the amount of greenhouse gases from the transportation sector. And what this means is actually having a safe and functional transit system that encourages more ridership. That means extending the Blue Line to the airport. That means building all 3 segments of the Green Line. And that means having buses that drive directly from our neighborhoods in Ward 6 to downtown. It also means that we need to deal with the amount of wetlands that we lose due to urban sprawl. So Calgary holds the dubious distinction of destroying the most wetlands due to urban expansionism of all cities in Canada. We destroy acres and acres of vital wetlands. And these wetlands are a lot better for our environment than just private trees on lawns. These are critical ecosystems. So the way that we actually build our cities outwards and the way that we think about density has a huge environmental impact. So when it comes to the actual actions and the impacts, the results, not the gimmicky programs, but the real big pieces, we need to build denser housing and we need to build a safe and functional transit system.
Hey, John?
Thank you. One thing I've heard time and time again as we knocked on doors in Ward 6 is please City of Calgary, stay in your lane. Stay in your lane, focus on what's important, report services. Fundamentally, if the City of Calgary wants to decarbonize, I agree. You want the best way? Invest in transit. Make it safer, make it cost effective. I love taking the train to work. I hate waiting for the train. I hate waiting for my bus. I hate the 20-minute walk to the bus station. You lose that hour. Instead of 3, let's have 4. Instead of every 15 minutes, let's have every 5 minutes. Let's invest the capital. Let's even take that further. The water main break that happened. When they actually did the studies, they realized, what was it? 15, 20, 25% of water being wasted. My goodness, we've got infrastructure. We've got a $4.5 billion. I take a business perspective. Let's invest that capital. If we can save 20% on water, you've got an economic good, you've got a social good, you're not wasting a critical resource called water, and now an environmental good. So it's balancing those things together. And guess what we did? We stayed in our lane. And the climate emergency, as a business professional, I remember hearing that, and Council and the mayor stood up and said, this will bring capital. And there was a collective laughter in the city saying, no business would invest a single one comment. Actions speak louder than words. If we invest in clean tech, I serve as a temporary CEO of a clean tech organization here in Calgary. There is an infrastructure here. People are developing. We've got the biggest and best industry called oil and gas that's investing in there. Let's build that, decarbonize through there, get innovation. You see it every single day in downtown Calgary. Spending capital, taking efficiencies, and staying in our lane, and making sure our transit system is world-class. That's how we're going to reach the goals and objectives. And most importantly, stay in your lane. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move to Jeff for a rebuttal.
Yeah, I just want to say when I hear we need denser housing from Inam, I tell you what that means. It means more blanket rezoning, and it means that the new draft bylaw, land use bylaw, Calgary, he'll approve that for putting density on steroids. Look, one thing I learned on the question of density, there are places in communities where the community agrees we can do modest density, but not crazy density. So I'm concerned when I hear the idea that we're going to move to putting blanket rezoning on a whole bunch of classes of zoning now and put it on steroids. And in the same time, removing your voice in the community from having a public meeting on it and council's ability to say yes or no on applications that are not in the public interest. Secondly, look, every time I hear world-class public transit, I'll tell you what that means. When I was at the transport committee, leading the transport committee, we did studies on things like high-speed rail, the Windsor to Quebec corridor. Back then was $50 billion of infrastructure. World-class cost money, and it doesn't have the return on investment. We don't have the densities here to ensure we get paid back the fair amount. So it will mean that you're going to have ongoing subsidies paid for out of your taxes, in perpetuity. And we haven't even figured out yet how we're going to pay for the green line in phase 1, let alone phase 2 or 3 or anything else that people dream up. So we're going to have to do this smart and with real balance. And I'm not sure that having unfunded plans for that kind of stuff makes sense for the community.
Okay, Joanne.
Pass.
Okay, Inam.
I think having the density is vital to all of these plans, right? If we're talking about how are we going to be a fiscally responsible city, every time someone moves here, building an entire new road, an entire new water system, an entire new neighborhood is the most expensive way to do that as a city. If we're going to be a fiscally responsible city, it means getting serious about our transit-oriented development. It means making sure that we do have the density in those master plan neighborhoods. And it means making sure that we have enough density to get a lot of our communities that are below their peak populations back up to those populations where we know the infrastructure can sustain them. If we're going to be serious about how do we build a city in a financially responsible way, it can't just be sprawl out forever.
Hey, John.
Thank you. Let me just add one quick point. We were talking about, there was one comment about decarbonization, getting people out of cars and into transit. And I think the real transit solution is a mix of everything. We need the ability to walk when it's not next 40. We need good public transit. We need good roads. We need that balance. And that's what it comes down to. You're going to address all the challenges on the city with the balance, whether it's community involvement, blanket rezoning, decarbonization, while balancing capital spending, the needs of the city, and staying in the lane. So it comes back to all that approaches. You take a balance, you listen to all stakeholders, you come to a good objective. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on. This past week, the city tabled a proposed property tax increase, which works to about an average of 5.4% increase for the average resident. Administration has stated this reflects to the cost of being a growing city. How do you view this position, and what approach would you take to balance growth and affordability, as a lot of residents feel that they are house poor? We're going to start with Joanne.
Thanks for the question. I would propose a 1-year tax freeze. I think our council needs to have time to look at auditing revenue and spending, to see where the tax dollars are going, and to determine where they're going to wasteful projects. Maybe there's inefficiencies that need to be taken into consideration as well. And my view on taxes are they're going to go up, but let's increase them at the city's rate of inflation or the municipal price index. And how would I propose a 1-year freeze without taking services and programs away from people? It doesn't need to happen. What we do is we still focus spending on core essential services. Items that are non-core would be reevaluated, and we would look at vacancy and hiring pauses on non-essential roles, cut non-critical consulting, defer low-impact pilot projects for nice-to-have projects, retire underutilized fleet. So there's many of our trucks and fleets that are underutilized, and why are we using them? Freeze non-essential travel and conferences. So these are just some examples of what we can do to really focus on core essential services. I believe we can increase funding to those programs as well as, and taking the time to have a bit of a pause to make sure we're spending taxpayer dollars properly.
Inam?
So I certainly hear a lot about the taxes when I'm knocking on doors. And this year we've actually had a bit of a triple whammy. Most of our assessed values have gone up, the city rate's gone up, and the provincial portion of our property taxes has gone way up. And I think the key here is many Calgarians are not seeing value for their tax dollar. And that's what I'd like to change. I think we need to have a much better, transparent financial process, right? Our city scores a D+ on financial transparency as evaluated independently. That is not good enough. We can't understand where the money is going if that's what our city scores. And a large part of why it scores that is we do so many mid-year budget adjustments. We don't make a budget and stick to it. But I'm not going to be proposing an unrealistic tax cut or anything, because I think with a city that's growing this fast, we need to be investing in things that have a long-term payout. I think we have a infrastructure deficit, depending on how you calculate it, between $6 and $8 billion. We need to be putting money towards paying that down. $1 in maintenance today saves us $5 down the road. And I think that is much more of a priority for me. I also think we need to be investing in the growth, right? We need to be setting people up for success. This is why we need another rec center in Ward 6, another library, those 7 fire halls, an increase in our police force. All of these things are critical investments, and we can't be leaving them to the side.
Okay, John?
I think this issue has to be priority one. It needs strong leadership at City Hall to be able to hold administration to account. The solution fundamentally comes down to that leadership and accountability. We talked about that before, setting the goals and objective. Simple matter, zero-based budgeting. You come in and say, these are the goals and objectives of Calgarians. We just talked about it. Cop to pop ratio falling, transit falling, infrastructure falling, community associations, housing falling. We are going to put that capital against our priorities. And you bring back that leadership to top of the house at City Council where it should be with Calgarians. I'd bring up that story about the parking authority because there is an example of real leadership at a city organization where we cut our operating costs. You can go into it, look at the historical financials, 18% from 2014 to 2017 when I was chairperson. We empower individuals. I stood as the chair in front of council, you can see it on YouTube, and defended the actions. We invested in capital. I go back to that. If you're spending $100 of operating costs, and I'll bring a real life example, $100, and you can spend $200 on capital and get rid of that $100, you do that all day. You want a simple example? Go to Schulteis. There is a soccer dome there. I asked the council, what does it cost to take it down? They take it down every year, $250,000. What is the capital to flood mitigating? $500,000. I said to the councilor, perfect. That's a 50% rate of return, do it all day. I can look every Calgarian in the eye and say, we made an investment. It's small, I recognize it's $1 per Calgarian to save 50 cents in perpetuity. And you can see the line. They said, I don't understand, but we don't want to spend. I said, councilor, we don't want to spend foolishly. Investing in capital, investing will make sense. We have $4.5 billion. The worst thing we can spend on operations, the best in capital. Think of the water main, 18, 20% of the water disappearing. That is unacceptable. You have to invest, you have to plan. And that comes back, that you can bring it back to council, create a long-term plan. Here's our accountability, listen and empower individuals like I do every single day as a CEO going to my field team are the first to speak. Every Wednesday we have what's called crossover. They're the first to speak. They're the boots on the ground. They see the small innovations. You save $100 at a time, guess what? It starts adding up and it becomes more and more and more. Empower individuals, leadership at top house, Calgarians Ward 6 have a choice. Who's going to be that leader? Thank you.
Okay, Jeff?
Thank you. That was an awful lot of words to say, no tax cut for you. So let me just say this, knocking doors for the last several months. Number one issue at the doors, by 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 for blanket rezoning is a property tax cut. Why? Because everybody at some level is facing an affordability crisis or an affordability challenge. Now, under Mayor Bondak and your council majority, taxes have gone in only one direction, up, 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 and up. And I'm not surprised because 2/3 of council being rookies, the easiest thing to do is to tax more and to spend more. Look, we got parliaments and legislatures that are filled with people who think the only thing you can do is to tax and to spend, but it costs you. And it's costing you more than you can afford. Getting tough on public spending while preserving core services and eliminating low-performing programs, cutting the size of the bureaucracy at the top, take courage and experience. And I have both. As a 4-term Conservative member of Parliament, we cut taxes of every kind: small business, big business, personal taxes, GST from 7% to 5%. And we also cut wasteful spending. We balanced budgets. And let's be clear, chronic surpluses, while they're raising your taxes, we have chronic surpluses. It tells me we have room for a property tax cut right away. And that's without cutting spending. Number two, let me just say this. Here's what my plan for you will look like. Property tax cut for you, spending cuts for City Hall. A 4-year pay freeze for councillors and the mayor. Wow, we shouldn't be getting more money when you're facing an affordability challenge. Budget clarity, line-by-line audit of spending. Rescinding the woke climate emergency to free up revenue. A review of reserves and fees that City Hall charges to make sure their cost recovery only. Fewer senior bureaucrats and more. I have a record that backs up what I say I want to do. I've done it before, and I'll do it again for you. Thank you.
Okay, Joanne, do you have a response?
So I've been door knocking since January. Number one issue is blanket rezoning. Number two is affordability and tax increases. This is the first election. I've actually door knocked for a lot of campaigns, a lot of elected officials. This is the first, let's say the first election I have experienced where it's not seniors on fixed incomes that are concerned. It's young people, it's families, and it's people my age who have young adult children at home still. So this affordability is a huge issue, and the property taxes are adding to the burden of families and seniors and homeowners. We need to really we need to make sure we balance spending and make sure that we go back to just focusing on core essential spending.
Okay, Inam?
I can pass.
Okay, John?
Great. Just want to bring a few points. When it comes to budgeting, anything at any level of government or in business, you need a plan. And step one is you prioritize where those dollars make sense. And I mentioned zero-based budgeting. That's important. You come back and say, this is what Calgarians want. Step two, you sit in a room and create the budget. The first decision one of the four of us are going to make as a councillor is a $5 billion budget. $5 billion. Who do you want making those budgets? Somebody who's been there, led billion-dollar organizations, can ask the tough questions, knows the precedent, knows the decisions that have to be made to get cuts, to make sure the services are efficient. And the comment on the surplus, it goes back to, it shows, even at City Hall, if you actually look at the numbers, the $250 million, go 1 degree of separation, you can see the business acumen. There was a one-time gain of 650 with a $400 million increase in costs. You know what Calgarians are facing this year? That was 10% over budget. Unacceptable. Not one councillor stood up and said, oh my goodness, you overspent by 10, that's $1 million a day. Guess what the first thing I would do? The lottery scratching what you got for 650, ignore. The fact that you overspent by 10% at $400 million can be brought up. We need leadership at City Hall. We need a business background. Let's have it where it sits.
Okay, Jeff?
I think for once I agree with John. We need experience, but we need the right experience. Never balanced a government budget before. I know that I have, and I know what it takes to work with the team to actually evaluate and be able to strike the balance between what we need in terms of our core responsibilities and what we need to deliver affordability and a tax cut for you. I'm telling you by experience, because I have 11 and a half years of experience, you can do both. And it takes political will, number one. It takes enough experience and courage to make tough decisions, because we're going to have to make tough decisions. The easiest thing is to simply raise taxes and raise spending and do it in perpetuity, right? What does it cost you to do that when you're sitting on a city council or when you're in the government? It really costs you nothing, right? It's the easiest thing to do. We're going to have 8 new councillors, right? You can send the right people there who have government experience. I'm the only one that's running that has significant government experience. And I'd like to put that to work for you on your behalf to give you the property tax cut you deserve while bolstering our core services like you also deserve.
Okay, Inam, many residents in Ward 6 have expressed displeasure about the city's engagement efforts, with residents feeling unseen or heard in a genuine way. How would you improve community engagement to ensure that residents are genuinely represented and it's not performative?
Yeah, this is a really good and important question, because we've seen our engagement process become an us and them fight that usually just ends up with the city throwing their hands up and doing whatever. And I don't think that that's the right way to do proper engagement. So I have a volunteer on my campaign who is living in a bungalow that he's purchased right next to a 3-story tall proposed development. And what this has done for him is provided an opportunity to actually look at what engagement can be. And so right before any of the paperwork is submitted, before any of the conversations at City Hall have happened, he reached out to the developer and he said, you know, these are the things that are important to me. Let's make sure that there's no windows into my wife's bedroom. Let's make sure that you fix the grade on the backyard so that it doesn't flood my garage. And let me please keep that big tree in the front lawn next to it. And so early in the process, before decisions were made, before designs were completed, the engagement happened. It allowed for him to say, okay, here are the things that I want. And if you nail all these things that I'm looking for, I'll go to council and support your proposal, even though it's 3 stories next to me. And to me, this provides us with a model of how we can do a better engagement. It needs to start earlier. It needs to come in before we have set plans and drawings, and it needs to include some give and take. We need to get better at engagement as a city because what we've seen so far doesn't work. And I'm committed to making sure that that process improves.
John?
John. Thank you. I started chatting engagement. I think the process is fundamentally broken. Several of us sat here, we were talking about the boat trail exchange in Sarcee, and we're talking $100 million, $300 million investment. And the point was, here, John, here's a post-it note, stick it over there, we'll get back to you. That's not engagement. Here's an email, info at something, that's not engagement. Engagement is setting up town halls in the community and talking, what do you need? It's getting developers in the same room. I go back to my experience, actually talking and saying, what do you need? Engagement is a strength, not a weakness. I said it before, one of my biggest frustrations was hearing City Hall say that we gained 6 weeks in efficiencies by blocking out Inam and Calgary's head of voice. We need to have that voice. It is not a problem to have citizens come to City Hall and talk to their representatives and say, this is my problem, this is what I want. That is the whole purpose of democracy. That is the whole purpose. How are we supposed to engage? We have to listen to Calgarians. We have to have that. We had an engagement process, area structure plan. We went down to City Hall and they fought tooth and nail to postpone a vote. They said, look at the area structure plan. We built this, and now you're getting down a kilometer away and you're just deciding to rip it up. That was years of experience. What I loved about that, many of the members in the community I recognize were part of that process. If you weren't there in the beginning, you had a chance. You had an opinion because it gains trust. And you started with trust. Because if I can look you in the eye and say, as a Calgarian, you don't have to disagree. Excuse me, you don't have to agree. We can disagree whether we should have a 2-story, 3-story, should be purple, pink, or blue. It doesn't matter. But you have to have trust. If you trust the process, you trust the individual leading that. And that's my commitment. Development the developer, the first question I will ask, did you engage the community? If not, there's door get out. I'll work with my colleagues in council and say, this is the expectation. We need to completely revamp that. A post-it note on $1 billion investment is not engagement. An email that disappears into a heat map, that's called NBA 101. Here's a heat map of what we
30
heard.
seconds.
We have to change it completely, bring back the community focused, and that's how you make Calgary a better city. Thank you.
Jeff?
Question on engagement here. There's actually two types of engagement. One is whether your city administration is engaged with you in terms of consultations and outcomes. And the second is whether your councilors engaged with you on the same type of a process, right? Because there's going to be a proposal come up through the bureaucracy, and then there's going to be a vote on it. And so, the engagement has to be right for both. I don't think the problem is that no one's listening. I actually think that the problem is they're not demonstrating they're listening by changing the types of policies that come out the other end of that. But I don't think there's any greater example of that where the bureaucracy failed and where council failed than blanket rezoning, right? This wasn't an idea that the people were clamoring for. This was an item that came up through the bureaucracy, and the councillors went willingly along with it in opposition to where you stood on this issue. Look, I'll say two things here. One, I have a record before this election when it comes to consultation. 12 pre-budget consultations, 200 meetings a year for the 6 months that I was in Parliament with community organizations, businesses, other levels of government, and town halls on key issues to get the public's feedback where it matters. I would suggest the second thing, because this is municipal politics, our engagement should be open-ended, not steered to a predetermined conclusion. That's going to have to change for the City Hall bureaucrats, and I intend to change it. So what are you going to get with me if you elect me as your councillor? You're going to get the kind of meetings and consultations so that I'm equipped to do my job by you. And secondly, you're going to have somebody who understands how to actually make the bureaucracy do what it should be doing properly. How do you hold them to account? I have experience doing that. I was a parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Transport. And in the aftermath of Black Gigantic, and I had to work with the top 20 civil servants to get them to do what they hadn't done for 18 years and do it in 18 months. I know how to get that done, and I'd like to do that for you. Thank you.
Joanne?
I'm not running because I need a job. I'm running because I've seen that Ward 6 residents do not have a voice. First and foremost, I want to be that voice. I will listen, and I will act on your behalf. So, blanket rezoning, remove the whole first step of the engagement process. The part of the process where I believe neighbors could talk to neighbors, community associations had a voice, and residents had real voices in decisions taking place in their community as well. That needs to change. We need to include you in the decisions. So I have lots of plans to increase how, as councillor, I would communicate and present communication to the communities in Ward 6. I would reach out in whatever way possible to get your input on whatever issues are top of mind at City Council. That could be online surveys, that could be roundtables with community leaders, however and whatever manner possible to connect with the constituents. I think that is most important when I'm voting on issues that are important to you. I also have plans, and I tell Chase this all the time. I also have plans to start a youth advisory council for Ward 6. I think it's important we include those young voices and bring their voices back to council too, because this is the future of their city. So I'll finalize this by saying, you are my focus, and I will always be acting on your behalf when there's engagement involved as a community or a resident.
Okay, Inam, do you have a rebuttal?
Yeah, I just want to say that repealing blanket rezoning doesn't fix the fundamentally flawed engagement process. Before blanket rezoning existed, we still had a very challenging situation where 95% of proposals were approved anyways. We need to think about how to move forward, not backwards, and redesign our engagement to occur earlier, to have the input be in the design phase, not just a presentation of designs that you get to say, oh, that looks great or not. And I really fundamentally believe that the path forward means doing that engagement earlier.
John?
Certainly hope that the position on blanket rezoning has been very clear at the doors of the hearing today. And I fundamentally disagree. Blanket rezoning is the problem because it took out Calgarians. It took out the voice. If you had the chance to come to our town halls, that was the voice. They wanted their voice to be heard. And any situation that takes that out under the guise of efficiency to get another objective is wrong. And we're going to change that. We're going to bring back consultation with communities, proper engagement, and not a post-it note on a board. Thank you.
Jeff?
When it comes to transparency and accountability, I'm the only one that has a public record on that. And I'll put that public record up against anyone right now. When it comes to engagement, as I said, two roles, how you're equipped in your elected office. Talked about the consultations, I talked about the community meetings, I talked about the town halls. What did that lead to? Effect on our budgets and our policies as government. A number of first in Canada policies that no other member of parliament got. Why? Because I was equipped from the community. Infrastructure priorities, we could lock them off. Some of the highest per capita infrastructure investments in the country. Tax relief, targeted community grants. And then on the other side with the bureaucracy, as parliamentary secretary, I had to work to top 20 civil servants in Transport Canada. What did we have to do? Well, number one, I found that they couldn't make a work plan very sufficiently. So we had to work with them to make sure they had the right work plan for all the undone work that they had not done. We had to prioritize it. I had to meet with them one time a week to make sure they were making progress behind closed doors and brought them in front of our committee every 2 to 3 months. Council needs to bring the bureaucrats back, not just ensure they got the right plan and that they're making progress on it. They have to report to the public and know that they're going to be held accountable, or we'll fire the CAO to do it.
And lastly, Joanne. Joanne. Yes.
Well, all I will tell you is that engagement is key in city planning, in community planning, and you should have a voice. I agree, the city does put on a lot of engagement sessions around the city. I believe the employees that work with the city that come to those engagements are doing an amazing job. But it's the follow through with these engagement sessions. People are feeling like the engagement sessions mean nothing. That the city's coming with an agenda or a plan already in mind, and that any feedback that they give is not being heard. So I agree with John, the engagement process needs to be changed slightly. And it needs to include your voices and your real voices at the decision table.
Okay, we're gonna finish off with one last question, and you guys are gonna have 1.5 minutes to answer this, and your rebuttal is going to be 1 minute. We're gonna start with John. Please share your thoughts on the Boat Trail Sarcee Road expansions.
Great. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Since I moved to Ward 6 15 plus years ago, with the introduction of the ring road now, all of a sudden, Boat Trail has become the real bottleneck as compared to Sarcee. I think what's interesting is we sat in this room right here. We were talking about it. The one that came away is we don't have this funding. So we need a leader to get that funded. How do you get that funded? I walk into the offices of the other councillors who are using Boat Trail. Did you know that Boat Trail now, the majority of cars are actually from the ring road? It's not just from Ward 6. Perfect. How we're going to get this through is if I put my hand up in council and say, I want to spend $2, $3, $500 million on Boat Trail, there's going to be 14 gains and it's over. Or you do what you do. You collaborate, you work together, you get other councillors. Did you know, we're bringing data. Did you know that this number of cars are coming from Ward 1, 2, 3, et cetera, et cetera. You build that consensus. You're going to hear that. You work and you hustle. Just like you do in business, you're going to have to bring that to council. I think it's a huge priority. We finally get one, my goodness. Now, I think the plan that's been proposed needs to be reviewed. There's some concerns. My father lives on 17th Avenue. There's nothing more frustrating going to downtown, stopping at 17 red lights as you come in. Think about Wildwood, you're coming in there. So we have a plan to amend it, but fundamentally, you have to get the 8 votes, and you need somebody that actually has experience in doing that to get that project built. Thank you.
Jen?
Sure, well, only one of us has the experience being able to get infrastructure projects funded. In my time as a member of parliament, we had some of the most significant infrastructure investments in the communities I represented. I don't know the key basics. What is it going to take? Well, number one, let's start with not just Bow Trail, but I think Sarcee Richmond is going to need some help as well. So how do we get these infrastructure priorities moving? One, how do you get to become the priority among other competing priorities? I have the experience in how to do that. Two, you're going to have to affect the machinery of government. You're going to have to know where to press, where to push to make sure that they stay on time or faster than on time with the approvals and the due diligence side of that. I understand how the machinery of government works. I have a lot of experience doing that. And third, you have to understand that as much as you'd like collaboration, council can also be competitive. Everybody else wants infrastructure investments in their communities. How do you work in an environment like that? I came in a caucus and I can tell you it was both collaborative. We had agreement on things and it was competitive. You have to know also how to outcompete if you're not getting the collaboration on staging the infrastructure priorities you need in your community. I have a record of delivering results, including on infrastructure, and I'd like to put my experience to work for you. Thank you.
Joanne?
I'm a huge supporter of the Boat Trail Sarcee interchange expansion. I think it's great. It's long overdue. And I would like to see us push as Ward 6 Council, whoever wins. I'm hoping they will push for Richmond and Sarcee expansion as well, or interchange at that location. There's a lot of wish list, Ward 6 wish list items on my list. And it's true, you do need to do some horse trading when you're at the council table, and collaborating is key as a councillor. That's where I can bring lots of strength. I serve on many boards. I have run my own small business, and I work with a lot of nonprofits. Nonprofits need you to advocate on their behalf, and I will advocate on your behalf as a Ward 6 councillor. Infrastructure is key. I think in the next 4 years, our council needs to focus on investing in infrastructure. It's obvious we need to proactively fix our infrastructure, roads, and make sure that livability is key and top of mind for our residents.
Inam?
I think the first thing to think about when we think about the Bow Trail Sarcee Road expansion is what the goal of this project should be. Because I think just adding road capacity can't be our only focus. We need to address some of the serious problems in that area. There are huge safety concerns at that intersection when it comes to cyclists going diagonal across the road when there's turn signals. We need to find a better solution to keep cyclists and cars from interfacing directly. We also need to think about what our priorities are when it comes to whether or not that interchange is going to cut through the dog park at Edwardy. There's also a lot of concerns I've heard from folks who live along those areas about the noise from a new interchange. And so we need to make sure we have the sound barriers in place. We can't just go push forward, rah, 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 all roads are going to solve all our problems, but actually consider these projects holistically. What kind of impacts do they have on our communities? What are the things we need to do to mitigate those challenges? And how do we do a proper engagement that understands these concerns and isn't just focused about getting more money for roads from the feds?
John, do you have a rebuttal quickly?
Perfect. I love the comment, council is competitive. Try to raise $250 million in capital markets as a CFO of an oil and gas company going to Toronto, New York, and beyond. It is beyond competitive. That's how you get a skill set. You understand your competition, you understand your competitive advantage, and you work with others to show the benefit there. Think of the board of directors. I've come in as lonely director, worked myself up to chair because you can build and collaborate. Remember, every decision, one vote, you need 8. You need that leader that has a proven track record, not only in business, but in life, that can actually get things done, show success, and gets projects across the goal line. Thank you.
Jeff?
Thank you. No other question that we've had today is the distinction between experience more important than this question. How do you get a project across the goal line in a political environment when you're in government? I have the experience. None of my competitors have the experience of doing that. And there's the balance between what's collaborative and the tension of what's competitive. Remember, everybody else wants the same dollar you want. And I understand how to navigate that. Secondly, I understand how to navigate the bureaucracy, what buttons to push to get the machinery of government to get projects moving ahead through the due diligence. Otherwise, they can get stuck for years and years. So I want to thank you today. I think that was the last question for us, but I appreciate your time. I appreciate you hearing us out on this one. And I'd love to put my significant experience in government to work for you. I'm job ready day one, not year 3 or 4.
Thank you, Joanne.
Let's work together as a council and as a community association and residents. I think we need to work together to get these projects done. We need to prioritize them and we need to trust that there's 15 people on council. So I'm only one vote. Yes, we need to collaborate. And I think it's important to find those voices that will collaborate best on your behalf.
Inam, just a heads up, we're not doing closing statements just quite yet. This is just specifically Trail SRC.
I will wait for the closing statement.
Okay, we're gonna move on to closing statements and we're gonna start with Jeff. I was gonna do just.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Hi, I'm Jeff Watson, and on October 20th, I asked for your vote for City Council Ward 6. I was a 4-time Conservative member of Parliament with significant experience in government and a record of delivering results for communities. Voters have been clear. They want change, and I offer change you can trust. Mayor Gondek and her majority have Calgary on the wrong track. Taxes up, spending out of control, blanket rezoning, destroying the character of our unique communities, and a council focused on the wrong priorities. Is it any wonder 9 out of 14 city councilors were rookies with no governing experience, and it showed in poor judgment, a long learning curve, and a complete misunderstanding of the role of council. The next council will have 8 new faces, and sadly, even less experience governing. City council is not entry-level government. The responsibilities are sobering, and the challenges facing our city require job readiness on day 1, not year 3 or 4. You, the voters of Ward 6, have the only opportunity to ensure one of the 8 new council faces has actual experience governing. I'm running on an action plan, 6 clear priorities: ward first representation, property tax cut, repeal blanket rezoning, focus on the basics, safe streets, transit and combating anti-Semitism, and working with, not against the province.
30 seconds.
My 6 for 6 action plan is backed by my record. No other candidate in front of you has done that. I ask you to put my proven experience to work for you. On October 20th, vote Jeff Watson for City Council Ward 6 for change you can trust. Thank you.
Joanne?
Ward 6 is my home. For 3 decades, I've shown up here, volunteering, working with community associations, and helping local businesses and nonprofits. I know how budgets work, how teams deliver, how to turn plans into results, and how to govern and shape policy. I also know how to work with people who have a lot of different ideas and skill sets, and collaborating will be key for the next city councillor. That is my skill set. What City Hall needs now isn't more spin, it's stamina. It's a councillor who will read every page, return every call, and fight for Ward 6 when votes get tough. I will hold administration to account, demand focus on core services, will listen first, report back clearly, and never forget who elected me. I bring experience you can trust, community relations that matter, and the grit to get it done. If you want safe streets, reliable infrastructure, and taxpayer respect, I'm ready to go for work for you. On day 1, I'm asking you for your vote and trust on October 20th.
Okay, Inam?
Hi, everyone. I'm going to take this time to actually address a question I wished I got because I was hoping that somebody would ask me why I'm running with the party. And so when the parties were announced by the provincial government, like the Calgarians, I wasn't a huge fan of that change. But I will say it's provided a really unique opportunity to change how things are done at City Hall. Right now, we've seen 15 city councilors with their own egos, their own agendas, their own pet projects that are unwilling to collaborate to get results. Calgarians are facing complex challenges, and that requires teamwork. And so being a part of a party, I get to rely on the expertise of so many other folks. When it comes to something like downtown safety and homelessness, I'm on a team with someone who's been a peace officer, someone with the Downtown Business Association, and our male candidate who's been with the Calgary Police Commission. I don't pretend to know everything because I can't. And I think it would be lying to you if I said I did. But what I can do is actually collaborate and demonstrate that by being a team player. And, whether or not the Calgary Party gets elected, I'm a team player regardless. I'll work with whichever councillors are in there, whichever mayor gets elected. In fact, I've sat down with a few of them and chatted about some of our shared priorities. And, I'm also committed to making sure that there's no whip votes. When I joined the Calgary Party, that was one of my commitments, is making sure that I'll always be able to vote for Ward 6. And that's a commitment I'll make publicly every day of the week. Calgarians need to have council that can work as a team. But Ward 6 needs a councillor that they can trust to be representative. And I offer you both the teamwork and the representation.
And finally, John.
Thank you so much. Calgarians, in particular Ward 6, have a choice this election. I'm actually super excited about it. I've had the chance to talk to every single mayoral candidate, it's not fair, top 5 or 6, 25 candidates for council across the city. And what I'm excited about is people are there for change. People want to do something different. They recognize downtown is not working. We want diversity of thought, and here's a chance to bring in somebody that has 25 years of business experience, 25 years of flawless execution, getting things done, understanding what it takes to build major projects, to raise capital, and hold accountability on a financial and operating perspective. I go back to board experience, not only serving directly for city council, which was a privilege, getting the largest capital investment for the parking authority, serving on 2 public company boards, where there are brilliant men and women serving, and gaining that consensus. And I come back to that because you've heard a lot of great ideas. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, I'm going to do that. But when you put the X next to your name on October 20th, who has actually built consensus across party lines, across philosophies, across dogmas? I have. I serve on boards, public and private. I understand what's taken. We need 8 votes. You want a boat trail overpass? 8 votes. You want to end blank rezoning? 8 votes. You actually want accountability at City Hall for spending? 8 votes. Who's going to do that? The business leader with 25 years experience, the chairperson of public companies, private companies, and government organizations as well. My name is John Pantazopoulos. I'm going to earn your trust and your vote on October 20th.
All right, thank you so much to our candidates for coming out here. This was amazing. I know, importantly, you guys want to know who won the waffles. Yeah. So Melissa is going to, do we have any drum roll? Yeah. So it was Station D, the pumpkin spice waffles brought by Jeff Watson.
Jeff gets a trophy and it says winner of Ward 6 waffle.
Hey, thank you guys so much for all your patience. Thank you so much to our volunteers. We really, really, really thank you. Consider getting involved with their community association. Yeah, everybody, we need more volunteers and more voices.